Hello, welcome to another installment in our series of videos that we are on number 3 now. So we've done 2 videos up to this point, and if you have not watched those 2 videos, the first one was called The Meaning of Fair Trade in Our Society, and the second one was called What Makes It All Work. And if you have not watched those videos, it's strongly recommended to go back and find those and take a few minutes and watch through those, because we are talking about certain ideas that we're developing as we move along. And the idea here is that we're developing a common understanding of a very complex situation, which is our society that we're living in. So I had originally planned to continue on with the thoughts that we had developed, and I will get to that in a minute, I think. And I just wanted to touch a little bit on a few things that I've been thinking about in the last few minutes as I was getting ready to do this. And that the first couple of videos were, we just needed to start somewhere to have this discussion. So we started off talking about money, which is the big subject that we have been talking about, is money. And so I started off talking about where did that all come from. There's more involved than just money in what we need to be addressing. So what we're really here about is our society that we're living in. So we need to keep in mind, as we're going through these things that we're talking about, that there's more to this than just talking about money and that money's bad. That's not what this is about. It's involved, but it's not the only thing that's involved. We live in a system of society that's very complex, and it has been designed to be complex. It's designed to be confusing and to not really be understood. The system of society, we can call it a number of different things. For the purposes of our work, we could call it the 3D system of society. The system, as I've said several times already, is that this system is based on the idea of the pursuit of money and the pursuit of self-interest. And we've talked about that a good bit in the 2 videos that we've done so far, and I'll come back to that in a little bit. So we're talking about society as a system that was deliberately designed to function in the way that it does as we're living in the world now, and to produce the conditions that we're living in. This is not just an accidental, evolution of humanity. This was deliberately manipulated, created, designed, and intended to produce the conditions of our world that we're living in. So if we wish to do something constructive or do something effective to bring about change in our world, we need to start with understanding the nature of what is now, what is so. This is why I spend a lot of time talking about things like cause and effect, or we will be talking about cause and effect a good bit as we go along. And that a lot of what we see in the world are actually the results of the system. It's the effects of the system, the results. It's not the cause. We need to be looking at what is the cause. As we consider the cause and effect, this is a little off track from what I was originally planning to talk about, but it's been on my mind a lot. So the cause is what makes something happen. The effects are the results of that thing that happens. So if we were to think about, say, a sickness, for example, the symptoms might be a runny nose, sneezing, coughing, of, say, the common cold, for example. Those are commonly called and referred to, thought of as symptoms. but the symptoms are not the cause. So any of us that have maybe been involved in natural health and wellness are well aware that most of the products that are offered to us are about suppressing the symptoms. It's not about addressing the cause to make you healthy again. Much of our society is that way. So if we look at our society itself, we can look around and we see a lot of problems in the world. We've talked a little bit recently about the homeless. We've talked, when we first started all of this, we were talking about food, and which we could relate to the hungry and poverty. And there's a tendency to point to that as like this is the problem in our world. So if we think of that as a problem, well, is that really the cause of the problem, or is that the result of the problem? That is the effect. That is the symptom of the problem that's present in our world, that's creating these conditions that I keep saying. The conditions are, as I keep calling it, are the result, the effects, the symptoms of something that's wrong. So we can carry this through to many other things. We could think of the homeless. We could think of poverty. We could think of conditions that many people in the world are living in that are poverty type conditions. Those are conditions that we might call symptoms of a society that has a serious problem going on. But there are other symptoms, such as rampant materialism. That's a symptom. Things like if we look at like personal conditions of one's life, things like insecurities or something like self-sabotage, or that as we are told through so much of our society that we should be like pursuing success and abundance and accumulating the things of the world, and if that's not happening, then we're considered a failure. Well, that attitude of looking at ourselves like, well, I'm a failure because I haven't accumulated massive amounts of the things of the world, that's a symptom of this society. Okay, well, I could go on with this discussion for a while, but I'm taking up time with that. This system of society that we're living in, it's very complicated. I've said that already. So the system we're living in has many different aspects. It's like a complex machine. If we were to think of a clock, an older style clock that had the mechanisms in it, the gears in it, for example, a clock like Big Ben, and which is very famous, and we're familiar with the gears that are moving in there. These are gears and wheels that are turning that makes the clock work. And our system of society is arranged in a similar manner, that there are different mechanisms that are working to keep it all running, and they're like gears that are working in there, gears within gears. There's a reference in the Bible that called this wheels within wheels. In modern terms, we could look at this as the arrangements of corporations in the world, where we have corporations within corporations within corporations within corporations. The wheels within the wheels that make the system work. But this system is in control of all of the different aspects of our society, all of the major aspects of our society. So there's more involved than just money. So with money, we have the banking system, for example, that handles all the finances, the whole financial system. But there are other aspects of our society, such as government, education, the media, police, the legal system, the laws that the legal system operate by, military, just to mention a few of these things, that are major areas of our society that are controlled by the system of control but more importantly, they are controlled by those who are in control of the whole system. We don't have to get involved in trying to name who those are. We'll talk about that in more detail. But I was trying to make a point that these things that I'm talking about are not just random thoughts. It is a little difficult to try to arrange these thoughts in a way to communicate them in a way that people will kind of relate to it. So it is a bit of a challenge sitting on this side of the camera of how to go about arranging these concepts in a way that other people will respond to it or relate to it. So I had a number of things in mind I was planning to talk about when I sat down, and they seem to be elusive at the moment. I'm trying to keep this in a reasonable train of thought. So to step back and review over our previous videos, we started off talking about money, how it was developed, as starting off as what we called fair trade. It was an exchange. The idea was an exchange of goods or services. And then they developed this idea of currency. So the money, the currency, originally this was supposed to be, or we're told that it's supposed to represent something of value to be exchanged. Some people will call this an exchange of energy, but it's really, the bottom line is that it's really just, I've got something you want, you've got something that I want, and we exchange it, which is where the idea of what's in it for me comes into play. And that idea of what's in it for me is, it introduces the idea of, or the practice, if you will, or the pursuit of self-interest, which is the other element that is needed for this system to work. But that currency, it's a tool, and that tool provides leverage. It's a type of leverage that utilizes your needs of things that are needed to live, and it leverages that, which then provides a way to have control over you. So I think one of the things I had started off wanting to talk about was that much of what's involved here is about how to get the population to cooperate with this system. So it's like the thought was, how did they get everybody so involved and enrolled into participating in this system? And that was part of the ideas that I was trying to present in the last two videos, that these key elements to pursue the money and to pursue self-interest, because pursuing self-interest is what keeps people involved, or else you're not going to participate in the system. So it required getting the population involved in participating in it voluntarily in order to make the system work. So a lot of what's involved with it is basically just to get you interested enough to stay involved. Part of it was to create an environment to where it was necessary to survive, because they have control of the things that are needed for the people to be able to live. The exchange of currency is what sets the stage for the imbalance that they are after. So I talk about imbalance. That means some people have excessive amounts and some people don't. So this is the haves and the have-nots that we may have heard about. It creates an imbalance. The imbalance itself creates an environment of hostility in the world, which I may have mentioned. So they leverage your needs. It's a matter of survival that instigates you becoming willing to do whatever is necessary to participate in the system to come up with the money that is required in order to be able to obtain the things that are needed to live. And the other side of this is by pursuing your own self-interest, then you can have that imbalance as well, or at least that's the promise. So it's this, here in the area where we live, this is called the dream, the American dream. It may not be so much in the other parts of the world, but this country was kind of founded on that idea that pursue the dream, pursue the American dream, to obtain the things of the world, the house, materialistic things, and all that goes along with it. So the point that I was trying to make, or had intended to make in this video, was the point of the programming that is necessary to get the cooperation of the people. And this all occurs at a very early age. It occurs in early childhood. The programming begins from the time we're born, and we hear these things in the environment where we are living as a child. And these things that we are exposed to in our home environment become what we accept as our belief about the reality of the world we live in. And the point that I had actually planned to get to with this video is that this is very important as far as what are the things that the child learns and accepts as reality, as the truth of this is the way life is, this is the way the world is. Those things that are accepted become the basis of the reality that they will experience. This is another complex situation that I had not really planned to get into yet, but I think it needs to be mentioned, and that this is going to be one of the keys that we will be working with if we want to create change in the world. Is we need to address what are the things that were accepted and programmed into the consciousness as children, that then becomes the basis of the reality that they are experiencing. Because what is formed and accepted to the subconscious during these first few years, the subconscious works together with the universe and produces that as the experience of one's reality. And this is relevant on an individual basis, because the conditions that one is exposed to in the early childhood, it can be either life is good and things are fine, or it could be it could produce the conditions, the results that many of us are familiar with, that are often called the wounds of the inner child, which then produces a completely different kind of experience of a reality. But this principle of that the things that are accepted and established in the subconscious at this early stage of development, that becomes the basis of the reality, is not only on an individual personal basis, but it's also on a collective basis. And this is going to be one of the big principles that we will be working with, that as we approach this. And I was not intending to talk about this part of it this soon, but I think it needs to at least be partly put out there to start thinking about and considering. Because this collective subconscious, that I call it, these principles of that this is the way the world is, that was programmed in and during childhood, becomes what is being manifested, if we can accept that as an idea, that's being manifested as our collective experience of reality. And if all of that programming is all about this system of society that we call this 3D system of society, or as it's become somewhat popular to call the Matrix, which was another thing I was going to discuss, but not now, that the principles of that life is all about the pursuit of the money and the pursuit of self-interest, and money is what makes the world go round, and it's all about the money, and you got to do whatever it takes to get the money and to pursue your own wishes and your own desires. When that becomes the basis of what one's, we'll say, perception of reality is about, that becomes part of a broader scope of consciousness, which is, we'll say, projecting those belief systems into the universe, which the universe then provides us with that as our experienced reality. And this is what it is that we need to address if we wish to make a difference in our experienced reality. The cause of our reality is those things that we accepted as children that we believe. And it's not only just you and me sitting here looking at each other on this screen. It's about the majority of the population. That's the real issue here. Because the symptoms, the effects, are the conditions that we're living in that are the result of the concepts, the beliefs, the perceptions, the paradigms that we accepted as children on a collective level. Everybody's been programmed to accept the same ideas as the basis that society is supposed to be about, according to who designed it. And this is what we're here to address, because if we are able to address these things with people in a way that we can look at this and go, oh wow, I didn't realize this is what I thought was the reality of the world we live in, then we can make a conscious choice to discard that. Because until these fundamental concepts that were established during this early period of childhood, those remain in place, producing whatever it is that says in our world, that will remain in place, continuing to produce the same results until it's directly addressed and cleared from the consciousness as a process of discarding those beliefs. This is the heart of what we're here to talk about doing. And I know this is running quite a bit long. It's hard to have a discussion like this in 5 minutes. I'm sorry. So I'm going to try to wrap this up now. I feel it's very incomplete from the things that I really wanted to talk about. Even though I didn't get to finish really the kind of detail that I felt needs to be expressed in order to explain these ideas in a way that's effective and understood, I'm going to need to wrap this up. It's getting too long. So thanks for taking a few minutes to sit through another one of these videos. I hope that you're finding it worthwhile. I also hope that you'll hang in there with me until we can all reach a point where we have some understanding of these things and get a sense of that we really are going somewhere with this. And it does all have a point. And it is about creating a shift in the consciousness of, it begins as individuals, and then it spreads to other individuals, and eventually could create a wave through the general population. So please stick around for another video, and I hope to see you then.